back again with another episode of your All Things Wrestling podcast, Faction 911. For today's show, I'm your host, FannMann, along with my other co-host, C. Rich, and the guy who calls it down the middle, Darren Stone. So, how are we feeling today? One hell of a week of wrestling this week, or last week, that we'll talk about today. So, what do you guys think? Good week of wrestling, right?
Yeah, very
absolutely, good. Absolutely. Great week.
Yeah. So, and we'll start off with that right off the bat and talk about something that happened overseas, Saudi Arabia. Pretty good crowd. C. Rich even said, we'll talk about that right off the bat. Crown Jewel. So, yeah, what was it that you said? We watched a couple matches together and the Crown Jewel. And one of the big things that stuck out to me that you said while we were watching, you said, man, I love the crowd. The crowd's into it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The crowd was into everything. Yeah. I mean, everything. And I tell you what was really impressive to me was how it was an outdoor show and it was an incredible spectacle. I mean, it looked like an event. It looked like a Super Bowl type of event. And, granted, they're over in Riyadh and, they're going to put on the best show possible. And I thought they put on a fantastic show. And I thought the matches that we saw, I thought were great. And I think you had a fantastic main event, and that's that's the ball game, folks. I mean, that's exactly what you want.
Yeah. And you got the top dog in the main event with someone who only his third match in, and one hell of a worker for only his third match on the biggest stage of all, in terms of promotion wise. So, and so what, Dan? What do you think of Logan Paul, this YouTuber turned wrestler, just about?
I'll be the first to admit I had my doubts about Logan Paul. I mean, kind of like when Pat McAfee first started, I had my doubts. I mean, former NFL guy. I mean, the guy can do. He's a great athlete. But Logan Paul, just in the few matches he's had, the short time, the first match he had was, working with the Miz and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Honestly, the Miz can, make anybody shine.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But Logan, with all the work that he's put in with Shawn Michaels and everything over the past few months or whatever, I would. He's got it. I mean, if he wants to pursue a future in this business, I honestly think Logan Paul could do it. I really, truly do. Not only his in-ring work, but it's kind of obvious his skills on the mic are just already over the top. Already over the top.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought his you look at it and hats off to Shawn Michaels. I mean, blame. He made this guy. I think he had a lot to work with Logan Paul, but I also think Shawn Michaels is probably one of the better teachers out there.
Absolutely.
And to Paul's credit, he obviously took everything seriously and wasn't like, I don't want to say, anybody, like Mr. T or somebody, but he took it really seriously and had a lot of respect for everybody that was in the ring and obviously had a lot of respect for his teacher, Shawn Michaels. So, I mean, that was a great match and a surprisingly great match. And if you look at the crowd was, they were into it the entire time.
Yeah.
Two things I will say real quick. One, also credit to Roman Reigns, because Roman, sold everything that was thrown at him. Again, he made Logan shine as well.
Yeah.
And two, credit to Logan Paul for, think about the new audience that he is bringing to wrestling. He's got these millions and millions of YouTube followers and social media followers, and they're like, oh, he's going to be in a pro wrestling match. We have to watch. So there's more eyes now on WWE and sports entertainment, pro wrestling, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
In general now than ever before.
Yeah. And think about the risk that the WWE took. I guess that was Hunter's call. to do this match. I mean, you think about it, it's like, oh, look how many YouTubers he has. He's a pretty good athlete. You know, maybe we'll take a chance on it. If that match is a dud, you know, it's messy. You know, the aftermath of that is awful.
Yeah.
But they rolled the dice and they won. You know, kind of like Darren in Las Vegas. You know, rolls the dice and wins. You know,
there you go. You know, that's another conversation for another time. But no, I agree. I agree 100%. They didn't start him in developmental and NXT. You know, on Sunday Night Heat, etc. They put him. You know, he's been in several. You know, he's worked his way up to third match, main event of one of the Saudi Arabia shows, which they take such great pride in.
Right.
In front of, you know, what was the crowd number? 70,000 people at in Riyadh. I mean, that's just absolutely insane. And like you said, both he, Roman, and WWE in general just knocked it out of the park with that one. So
absolutely,
he's overseas too, which is crazy. Logan Paul was
right.
He was good with that crowd. But right back to what C. Rich said, talking about the crowd, and I think we have kind of responsibility sometimes as the audience, because we show up, you know, we spend our hard work and the money we earn through hard work and buy a ticket, and we're there. It's a two-way street. You know, we show up and all right, we're here. I give us something, and then the wrestlers do their job. And but if the crowd's not into it, and then they really can't. You know, it's tough for the wrestlers as well. So the relationship between the fan and the wrestler is important, and it
and the one thing I'll say to that, Anthony, is, you know, having talked to several wrestlers in the past, one thing they said that was their biggest issue during the pandemic was there was no crowd to work with.
That's true.
So they knew they had a job to do, but it was so hard at times to. It was Charlotte Flair, actually, I talked to back in about a year ago now. She said that was the biggest thing, is she knew that she had a job to do, but just not being able to live off, you know, work off the crowd reaction. It just wasn't the same. So, you know, that was her biggest excitement about getting back on the road, was working in front of the crowd and knowing, you know, she feeds off them, they feed off her. And I think all the wrestlers I've talked to have said that exact same thing. So you're right. Ed.
Oh yeah. One other thing, there was toward the end, and it was really a small thing, but as Roman Reigns is leaving the ring, you know, there's this obvious, you know, hoopla and everything like that, but he's caught on mic, you know, and I know he knows he's on mic, but he's like, I never want to see this guy again.
Take him back to YouTube.
And it's like, you know, I'm like, well, I got a feeling you're going to see him again. I think all of us are going to see him again.
Right.
So yeah.
And we'll see him again in this segment here. We'll talk about him again. But next, his old buddy on Raw, Seth Rollins out of the Shield, stays the United States champion because he had an open challenge on Raw. Bobby Lashley comes out and they say, "Oh, this is it." But instead, Theory actually cashes in on that belt, and I think maybe only the third time in history, I believe it is, where someone cashed in and didn't get it.
Right.
He's part of that unfortunate side of history now. And the last time I believe that happened off of memory, I just when Cena cashed in on CM Punk, but it was a known thing. Punk won, walked out of the company, that kind of deal.
There was actually one other time, Baron Corbin, when he unsuccessfully cashed in.
That's it.
I believe that was. I think that was on Jinder Mahal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
Yep. I forgot about that.
In a quick little squash match. So
yeah. So, but I think better things are to come for Theory. That was probably
absolutely
get that off his back, and he's going down the right path. So, and
the question I have for you guys then, speaking of Seth, and you may be leading into this, and if so, I apologize, Anthony, but where is Seth as far as babyface heel right now?
He's a tweener.
Yeah, right now he's a tweener, but
he's a tweener.
It started. I mean, the it's definitely looking like the fans are definitely behind him, singing his song and everything, and even his actions in the ring are starting to. My thought is WWE being like, hey, fans want you. Let's turn you this time.
Well, you got to give the fans what they want. That's
right.
It kind of reminds me, and maybe we'll talk about this, a little bit more later, but there have been wrestlers in the past that the fans loved, and no matter how hard they try to become a heel or a rule breaker, whatever you want to say, it just doesn't work,
Yeah.
And flip side, there's guys that, that were bad guys forever. And then, they turn fan favorite and it's like, okay, this just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So, Rollins is amazingly over, and
Yeah.
and he knows how to play to the crowd. He's a fun personality to watch. He's a great wrestler in the ring. Let him lead. Let him lead it. Yeah. Let him kind of, put the matches in front of them and let them work it out to way this thing's going to be.
Yeah, for sure. Rollins one of the top guys. If there wasn't a Roman, I can see Rollins being the face of the company. So,
absolutely.
For sure, and for a while he was. And another big thing that happened on Raw. We talked about it off air before we went on. The old trashing of the title, 24/7 belt. Which, side note, they call him the GOAT of the 24/7 title. R-Truth had a big injury, quad injury, and ended up having surgery. He's going to be out for quite a while. That's North Carolina's own. So hey,
yeah,
Truth, heal up quick, brother. While you're chilling in the Queen City in Charlotte. So
that was a nasty spill he took on NXT too.
Yeah.
When he was you could just see his leg just go in the wrong direction. I felt you knew right away there was something wrong. So absolutely. Best wishes to Truth.
And he's one of the not talked about enough guys. And man, he's a little bit older too. To the rest of the locker room, and still in phenomenal shape. It's crazy. He looks 21. He looks it physically and everything about him.
And
looks young.
He can still get over with the crowd. He still is what's up, buddy?
What's up? Right. Exactly. So that title was won by Nikki Cross. Stops in the trash can to be seen again later, I'm sure. But as of now, it's been put in the trash can. And moving on to SmackDown, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. The other part of that, the Usos on Raw, they kind of set it up between them and New Day, and they had a great back and forth promo. They were, I got you, I got those promos where it's like, oh, well, I got you, and they, well, what about this about you? What about this about you? It was phenomenal back and forth. They talked about pressure, and Xavier Woods said, well, we had to do it by ourselves. You guys had your family tree. And it's like, well, what do you think? Well, the pressure on us is coming from a family tree. Great writing, great promos, and that was a good way to keep flipping it back to each other.
And it definitely brought a sense of reality to because can you imagine being the Usos growing up in this business? Think about that. And New Day, like Xavier and Kofi both started from nothing.
Yeah.
So not only was it was a great promo, delivered well and everything, but there was definitely a feeling of reality based into that, into that promo. So
for sure, those guys they did good, and it showed on SmackDown. New Day was there to protect their reign as longest reigning tag champs of all time. Usos are now that, and deservedly so. And either way it would have went, I would have been happy. They both deserved that reign.
They the ones.
That's it. Now they are for sure.
They the ones.
And that was it for SmackDown. And right at the end of SmackDown, that kind of creates the new right before War Games Survivor Series. We see the Bloodline out there cutting a promo. The whole faction. Another faction shows up. Sheamus and his boys, and it's still uneven. and the music hits, and someone who we're going to talk to later, Scottish Warrior, Drew McIntyre, shows
Yeah.
up. So it looks like that's the new segment or match rivalry to come. So
I mean, they're definitely setting up for War Games. Now the question is, who is the fifth on the Brawling Brutes fight night, so to speak?
Right.
That the fight night faction, if you will. I mean, there's a few names that just come to my mind that I would think it would be someone from maybe like not actually an American, probably someone from the European side of the pond. Maybe bring up somebody from one of the guys from NXT that are, formerly NXT Europe. Bring them up and let them join the crowd. I mean, just basically UK versus the bloodline.
yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be a good one.
One guy it probably will not be will be William Regal.
Although he'll get in there and teach all those boys a lesson.
Absolutely. He's certainly got the talent.
Yeah, stud that he is. So, but I think that's it for those guys. Like I said, one hell of a week for wrestling. And
Absolutely.
Let's actually go back real quick. There was a couple big returns, especially on Raw, because we know that the OC has been having issues with the Judgment Day, but there was always Rhea Ripley, who they had no answer for.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And who comes in on Monday Night Raw to take the OC? None other than Miss Mia Yim. And I was so excited to see her back. She had that dreadful run with Retribution. It was worst kept secret. Who is under the mat? We all know it was Mia Yim. Now that they're letting Mia Yim be Mia Yim, props to her for being able to come back. And last night on SmackDown, Sarah Logan joined her husband and another Viking Raider in the other Viking Raider, Eric and Ivar.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and got a new little look about her, but she's got that Viking look. So
yeah,
I actually saw this morning. Ruby Soho tweeted out how her best friend is still a badass. So her and Liv are still great friends and everything as well. So it'd be, it's good to see what they have in store for her as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
There's a lot to come. So it seems like with all these returns and addings, it's really setting up for a pretty good War Games Survivor Series. So, which is one of the big four of the year. So that's the new thing that's coming up. Hey, on a side note, one big thing happened for that team right there. They finally won. And on the main stage with pretty cool looking uniforms. If you're a Panthers fan, you can check us out right here. And hey, we'll be right back.
Hey, Carolina Panthers fans, this is Donnie.
And I'm Anthony.
Hey, look, you want a place to go for all your cardiac cast info?
Then we got just a show for you.
This is the Donnie and Anthony Show.
An all Carolina Panthers podcast. For all your Carolina Panthers info, the Donnie and Anthony Show, the DNA Show. Because the black and blue runs through our DNA.
Keep pounding.
Saturday, December 10th, Thornton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Fortitude Wrestling Entertainment presents The Mega. Olympian and wrestling legend Kurt Angle headlines a fantastic night of action. Sunday, November 27th, Thornton Arena, Raleigh, North Carolina. Big Time Wrestling presents Return of the Dragon. Hall of Famer and legend Ricky Steamboat returns to the ring, headlining a fantastic card that features The Rock and Roll Express, FTR, Jay Lethal, Arn and Brock Anderson, the Briscoe Brothers, and more. Friday, November 25th through Sunday, November 27th,
Benton Convention Center, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. WrestleCade Weekend, a decade of mayhem. A 3-day fan fest event featuring meet and greets with many wrestling legends and current superstars. Also, autograph sessions, question and answer events, and live wrestling action throughout the weekend. Saturday, November 19th, Lenore County Fairgrounds, Kinston, North Carolina. Extreme Shock Wrestling presents Retaliation. TIM, Mark James, AC Divine, and Sean Denny will be in action in Kinston. Promoters, do you have a show coming up? Let us know. Email us at faction919nc@gmail.com. There's outstanding wrestling action across the region. You won't want to miss it. Be there.
All right, and also want to mention this week, JB Dirt Sheet Guy. It's his daughter's birthday, so happy birthday! And Surfer J, he'll be with us in the coming weeks. Next week, hopefully, with a new star on the independent scene in our indie corner with him. So, and another thank you to AC Divine last week for helping us out in a great interview and sitting down and talking with us. So, but up the chain, see Rich, you're going to talk about one of North Carolina's own, big guy, big name. What you got, man?
Yeah, in 1985, there was a match in Richmond, Virginia. Ric Flair defended the NWA World Title against Nature Boy Buddy Landel, so it was kind of a battle of the Nature Boys. And here's a little look at that.
Prior to becoming the famous manager of the Four Horsemen, J.J. Dillon managed Nature Boy Buddy Landel. He also managed Ron Bass and Black Bart. Buddy Landel would debut in 1979. He would be successful in the Mid-South and other Southern promotions. He would later hold the NWA National Heavyweight title. Nature Boy Ric Flair was a tweener at this time in 1985. He was booed in most places, but wildly popular in the Mid-Atlantic region. It was a hot night of action in Richmond this night with a wild crowd. The next month in Raleigh, the two Nature Boys would battle in front of a sellout crowd at Dorton Arena. This main event at the Coliseum would see both men bleeding and battling viciously. With chairs in the ring and fighting outside of it, neither man held anything back. After the wild, hard-fought battle, bloody but unbound, and to the delight of fans in Richmond, Ric Flair retains his NWA World Heavyweight title with a disqualification win over Buddy Landel.
And North Carolina's own Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Man, looking forward to the upcoming segments with that as well, right?
Yeah, that's basically the lead in. What I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks is taking a look at the three Nature Boys, Buddy Rodgers, Ric Flair, of course, and Buddy Landel. It's interesting. We were talking earlier about tweeners and talking about Seth Rollins being kind of a tweener right now. Well, at this time in 1985, Ric Flair in the Mid-Atlantic area was the ultimate tweener. They were trying to make him heel. This match in particular, not so much, but following that, where, JJ joins the Horsemen and, and the rest is history, so to speak, they were still getting cheered. They would get cheered as much as Dusty would. So, I mean, it's really interesting to watch the evolution of a wrestler progress like that. But what's interesting? That night in Richmond, that was the first night I met Ric Flair. You guys want to hear about it?
No, not really.
Okay, great. I'll tell you.
Well,
So keep in mind, I'm 18 years old. Okay. And to get into the bar, you have to be 21. But luckily, I looked a little older than what I was. I had a couple of friends, Kathy and Linda. And Ric Flair was after Kathy, and Kathy was kind of playing him off, blah blah blah. But anyway,
Shocking.
so they got me into the bar, and Kathy goes, well, you've never met Flair. Come on, I'll introduce you. And so she brought me up there to him and said, Rick, this is my friend Carl, C. Rich. And well, she didn't say C. Rich, but you know what I mean. And I shook his hand and I said, wow, it's really great to meet you. Hi, I'm a total mark for you. No, I didn't say that, but that's the way I was acting. It was like, oh my God, I've met my hero. And, he was extremely nice, extremely gracious. And I said something to him like, my family and I have watched you for years. And I said, you've been one of our favorites for many, many years. And he paused and he looked at me and he said, well, tell your parents I said thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being fans of mine. I appreciate it. And it was interesting. About 3 minutes after that, somebody tried to pick a fight with Dusty Rhodes in the bar. Keep in mind, all the wrestlers are in the bar, and you know how wrestlers are when they're together. You pick a fight with one, you're picking a fight with all of them. Yeah. And out of nowhere, Manny Fernandez and Magnum TA, this is before his accident, of course, just jump out of the woodwork and right there in front of Dusty. And the guy was drunk, and he was drunk and stupid. Yeah. But anyway, that all happened, and Kathy goes, "We're out of here. Come on, let's go." But that's my Ric Flair. That's my first meeting of Ric Flair story. So
very cool. And it's a brotherhood, like you said. You mess with one, you mess with all. So and
which is why you never ever jump into the ring. Because you're gonna get your butt kicked by not only the bad guy, but you're gonna get your butt kicked by the good guy, and maybe even the referee.
I was gonna say the ref. Yeah, I've seen the ref get in there a couple times and put the beat down on some guys. So good for them. Yeah, so because they don't know what you're trying to do. Yeah, so I don't blame them. So good stuff. You got a free event right there in front of you. Not only did you get to meet them, and then you got a free event.
Exactly.
A shoot event, if anything. So, hey, a couple places you can find Faction 919: Facebook, right here on YouTube, and Twitter, TikTok. We're all over the place. And we'll show you where else you can find us on social media.
Time now for the Faction 919 question of the week. What is your favorite wrestling movie and why? Just send your answers to faction919nc@gmail.com. We'll discuss it on next week's show. The question again, what is your favorite wrestling movie and why? Send your responses to faction919nc@gmail.com and we'll talk about it next week.
All right, you saw as our question of the week this week is, what is your favorite wrestling movie and why? There's a lot to choose from out there. And we had a question of the week last week. See, Rick.
Yeah. Last week's question was, who was the last WCW World Heavyweight Champion before the WWE took over in 2001? And our options were A, Kevin Nash, B, Sting, C, Booker T, D, Scott Steiner. And quite frankly, a lot of people got this right. The answer was C, Booker T.
King Booker, before King Booker.
Yeah, and one of the more underrated guys in wrestling history, in my opinion. He was not only a good worker, he's great on the stick, a good personality, and just fun to watch.
Yeah, for sure. And we kind of had a side conversation, you and I, about that your Mount Rushmore is always going to be Stone Cold, Flair, Taker, that mix of guys. if there was a secondary Mount Rushmore about guys who just didn't get their appreciation, people like Sting. Sting is probably like your number one answer.
Yeah.
Booker T is one of them. Sting and that kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah, Booker T had one heck of a run, and kind of like R-Truth. He still looks
Yeah.
good. He can still get in there and work. I know he could. So
And he comes from he's a good story too, because he comes
Yeah.
from kind of a troubled background, and then it gets straightened up in the old what was it, global wrestling federation
Yeah.
or whatever it was, and he and his brother, or the Cole brothers or something like that, and then on to WCW and bigger and better things for both of those guys. So
Well, I mean, he has said on numerous occasions, if it wasn't for his big brother, he may not be alive today.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, or he'd be in a prison cell somewhere in in Houston or whatever. But it was so good, not only could he and Stevie Ray go as as much as between Global and then their days as Harlem Heat, etc. But then when they when Stevie Ray decided to back off, and he told Booker, he's like, it's your time to shine now, and then has this long run at WCW as a five-time champion, then goes on to WWE after the takeover, does amazing things there, has a great story with Stone Cold. The whole never forget the supermarket brawl.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
And now, he's, a coach. He's, leading. He's a mentor to the young guys. He's now, he's back on commentary, which one of the best commentate, commentary, not necessarily play-by-play guys, but one of the best, color commentators in the business.
Right.
Right behind like Heenan and Lawler, probably.
Yeah.
So I mean, because he's had his knowledge of the business is just so deep, so he's able to add so much. But yeah, no, just phenomenal guy to watch.
Yeah. But my co-host on the other Panthers podcast I have, we always laugh, and we still say it today with each other, like when we're playing a video game together or something. We always say, "Oh, shuck it, duck it, quack quack," like So, and he would say
That's
that
what
a
makes
lot.
you a legend.
Yeah, right.
It's moments like
Yeah.
that make you a legend.
Yeah, exactly. And he would say that a lot when a certain guy that Darren Stone got to sit down with would come out and do his thing. So you sat down with yet another WWE superstar. So talk about that a little bit.
I did. Well, this week is going to be because, normally when we set these things up with WWE, you get 15 minutes, which, that's a good little time to get some stuff in. Well, it got, we were the last one of the day, and WWE's PR guy just happened to drop off the Zoom call. So I got close to 30 minutes with the Scottish Warrior, Drew McIntyre. We talked, we started at the beginning of, his days back in Scotland. I'm not going to attempt to try to remember the small village outside of Glasgow that he's from. You'll hear it in the interview. To his, when he first got in the business there, traveled up and down the entire UK, all the way through his days, the rise and fall of his first run in WWE to his now current run, his return, etc. But no, yeah, we'll start from here. We'll start with his, how he got into the business and everything like that. So.
First of all, Drew, thank you so much for taking time today to sit down and chat with us for a little bit.
No, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just let's start from the very beginning. Growing up in Scotland, in Ayr, Scotland, I believe is the name of the town, correct?
That's correct.
You knew you wanted to get into the business pretty much as a kid, right?
Yeah, I've known since I was 6 years old. I know that's because my dad likes to tell the story of a family meeting that I called after I saw wrestling for the first time at my older cousin's house, and was like, my goodness, I'm so captivated, these larger than life superstars. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a wrestler. So I got them together, told my mom, dad, and brother, I'm going to be a wrestler one day. And my parents said, cool, kids say stuff like that. I'm going to be a wrestler. I'm going to be an astronaut. All right. There's an elephant in the background there. I'll ride an elephant professionally one day. Like they say, the darndest things, but I never deviated from that plan. I never changed my mind. My parents started to realize, he's been serious about this. He hasn't changed his mind. He'll grow out of it eventually. It's like saying you're a cowboy, but you get carried away and dress as a cowboy every Halloween for 12 years. I did that. I was a cowboy every year for 12 years. I live in Nashville now, so I'm living that dream too. And eventually, when I was 15, I started, my wrestling lessons. That took a long time to convince my mom to let me do. It was a 24-hour round trip, but she knew it was always the dream. So I just made a deal with my parents that day that they would support the dream that I've had my whole life, as long as I get my education, which I also did, get my degree in criminology from university.
But from what I understood, because I kind of, just to get a little bit more background, I watched your episode of 24 on the WWE Network. There were no wrestling training schools in Scotland, so you had to go to England, correct?
Yeah, as far as you can go in England, literally almost falling off the end of England, a place called Portsmouth, which is very close. If you've ever heard of the Cliffs of Dover, that's right at the end of England, where you can just jump off and swim to France or whatever if you're a very, very good swimmer. So it was as far as you could possibly go when I lived, the mid kind of western area of Scotland. So it was literally a 12-hour train journey, taking 3 different trains at 15 to get there, and then the same back. So a 24-hour round trip just to take a wrestling lesson.
And is that how you got hooked up with a indie promotion in Britain, and then eventually it led to ICW, correct?
Yeah, I trained as often as I could afford at the place in Portsmouth. My mum and my nana would give me the money for anyway. So every school holiday, Easter holidays, I was down there for a few days to learn to wrestle. My summer holidays, I would spend a week down there. And it got to the point where I was like, this is just not sustainable. I need more training. I need more time in the ring. So myself and my buddies met an adult who was able to rent out a community center where I would start teaching people what I was learning in England. So myself and my buddies started the modern day Scottish wrestling scene, because there wasn't one. I would teach everybody what I was learning, and we started learning together. We started our own company when I was 16. We started doing shows in Scotland when I was 16. And eventually, one of my other friends, Mark Dallas, who runs ICW to this day, he started ICW finally, which was his dream. My dream was always wrestler. His was always be a promoter like Paul Heyman, who ran ECW back in the day. And he started the ICW, which was interesting to begin with, let's just say, but has come a very long way today, being on the WWE Network on Peacock.
Yeah, ICW definitely is a well-known independent brand, especially in Europe, correct?
Oh yeah, it's huge. We'll get to the part of the story, but I signed with WWE at 21, spent 8 years there, lost perspective, got fired, had to find myself before I returned to WWE. I returned to ICW first. I gave my mission statement at ICW. Their biggest show of the year was 1,500 people, which was gigantic for independent wrestling at the time, having 1,500 people there. That's what my comeback was. And I told the world, not only am I going to show you the real Drew, like this little company is going to take over the world, and we're going to show you what we can do. And people thought I was insane. I was in a comedy role when I was last in WWE. So they were like, this comedy guy from WWE is going to take over the world and show us how good he is. And I meant every word I said. And together with my friends in Scotland and with ICW, we took that 1,500 to 2,000 with my first big match. The following year to 4,000. And the year after that, for a return to WWE, the biggest independent show in UK wrestling over 30 years with over 7,000 people in the building. I did that with my buddies, which was such a cool feeling.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, we'll get into a little bit more of that in a little bit. 2009 comes around. You finally, sign with the main roster of WWE. You are basically given the daunting task of being Vince McMahon's chosen one. How much pressure did you feel with that role?
A little bit, but not as much as you'd think, considering he'd never done it before, and has only recently started doing something similar with Theory on our television show. But I'd always been very lucky in my career that when I talked about the Scottish thing we started, all the guys kind of designate me as the main guy, the main event. I was the biggest one, the tallest one, the one with the most experience. So I was always the top person throughout my career in the UK. I met Sheamus. We became the top act in Europe outside WWE, and when independent wrestling was in its infant stages, the big rivalry was Drew versus Sheamus. Came to America together. I was on television in my third week in a prominent role. And I was in developmental as the champion there, FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion. I was just always lucky enough to be in these top positions. So when I got the role of Vince McMahon's chosen one, as much as I was like, I understand this is a big deal, I was like, okay, this is just my current role, because then it's going to lead to being champion. Like I've been everywhere else. Why would it be any different than WWE? And then ended up not being the case, obviously.
Yeah. But you did go on within a few months, Intercontinental Champion, correct?
Yep. And tag team champion.
And tag team champion, right? I knew there was another one. But after a few, well, a year, 2 years tops, it started dwindling, and you started kind of moving down the card. I believe you basically said in the documentary, Drew Galloway's life got in the way of Drew McIntyre's career. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, there was a number of things. Personal life. I mean, for one, I was losing perspective of the dream and started getting angry when I wasn't given more prominent roles and prominent opportunities. So at the same time, I went through a divorce, and the biggest thing of all, my mom back home was sick, who was such an important person to me. It was difficult being away from her, never mind her being sick. And that's when things started to fall apart, and I started going out more and partying more and drinking more and burning the candle at both ends, and then throwing gasoline on the candle to make sure it was just engulfed in flames. I was pretty out of control during that period. And I can look back now, as angry as I was at the time, and say, oh my goodness, I would never have given myself a prominent opportunity. Like, we're a publicly traded company. It's not just what you do on television, it's how you represent the company and yourself off screen. And I couldn't have been trusted at that time to represent the company the way it needs to be represented as a prominent figure. But yeah, I was out of control, and inevitably it led to my downfall on the card, and eventually my firing from the company.
And, you were part of the, as you called it, the comedic role of 3MB. Three great wrestlers who they didn't see anything but comedy out of, correct?
Yeah, like Heath, he was the band guy. He was the one-man band. He talked about his love of music and played his air guitar and whatnot. It was very, very entertaining. They wanted a group, and they decided, we're going to give you that group. You're going to get your people who are going to be with you. And he was cool, and he started making suggestions of individuals he felt like would suit that role, like Fandango before he was Fandango, Johnny Curtis, very entertaining outside the ring. John Moxley, today, and Dean Ambrose. He's also got a bit of a quirky personality. You could see him as part of it. These are some of his suggestions. And Vince McMahon looked at the ideas and went, these are kind of the obvious ones, but he doesn't think like everybody else. He went, no, I want to see Drew McIntyre and Jinder Mahal, the two most serious guys, or the serious characters who have not shown anything but being serious, because he wants to see what we've got and give us the opportunity to maybe our personalities to shine a little more. Like, WWE can't just be the same forever. It gets boring. You can't just be angry all the time, even when you're winning titles. I was winning titles and just like scowling all the time for some reason, because I just wasn't relaxed. I felt like I had to be that badass all the time. And he was trying to bring something out of us while at the same time couldn't trust us in a prominent role. But okay, let's see if these guys can come out of their shell a little bit more with Heath. And that's why 3MB was put together. I had a broken wrist at the time, and they didn't realize I needed surgery. So he did have bigger plans than it ended up materializing. But 6 weeks after we formed, I had to get wrist surgery. I couldn't touch anyone for about 6 months. So that kind of put the 3MB in the ground before we even started.
WWE superstar Drew McIntyre sat down with us, and you talk about all the things. Plus, we got a guest star right now, FannMann Jr. But
FannMann Jr.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what a good start to it. This will be a 3-part interview series here. So, and Drew McIntyre talked about his beginnings and started to get into right there at the beginning with you, with 3MB and stuff. And so, what's the future like talking to him?
Well, going back to what you just saw, the thing I found most interesting about that is, and it's honestly, it's the story you hear from indie stars across the globe. He was, he would drive 15, take the train. I believe, he said took the train all up and down the UK just for, the equivalent of like 20, what we equate to like $25 per show, etc. Wouldn't even pay for the train ticket basically,
Right.
but spent the night, spent many nights on the train, etc. So again, but it just shows, all the hard work and stuff he was willing to put in to getting where he is today, especially. But next week you're going to hear basically, because of I guess you could call it the downfall of his roller coaster career, between both professionally, with his release from WWE back in 2011, and then his personal tragedies, with the death of his mother, and then how he basically started the rise back up when he made his return, and what it took for him to make his return to ICW. And not to give much away, but the one thing I do remember, because I actually watched this clip, is the reaction of the crowd in the arena for ICW when he came out of that curtain. I mean, I believe it was Mick Foley was the one who said that if the roof had not been so secure on that building, it would have blown off. And we talk about that as well next week. So look, I can't wait to share that with everybody and next week. So
Scars Warrior, and it's good timing, as we said.
Yeah.
That it looks like there might be a feud between him and Roman again, and so he showed up on SmackDown right there at the end. So, and his stock keeps rising.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he's been great. He was a great champion. He was a great superstar, and the one and only Darren Stone got him for an extra 15 minutes. So,
No, there you go.
Exactly. And you'll hear some good stuff not only next week but the following week with his with all that interview. So
yeah,
Right.
very
Right.
exciting stuff. So, and as you mentioned, in the future, so more to come. So you have to join us next week for part 2, and the week after for part 3, and then even more to come after that. So, and as usual, on behalf of C. Rich and Darren Stone, the guys who aren't here, but you'll see them next week, JB and Surfer J. We got FannMann Jr. And hey, we'll see you next week on the All Things Wrestling Podcast. Faction 919. You say bye.
Bye.
See you again next week. Drew McIntyre.